Sorry, go ahead.
So what can be done?
Um, like
Males like me find themselves bored at some time. Has a girlfriend, right? And then the other one seems to, and so it may turn them against one another. So two of them maybe fighting a lot. So that could be another issue.
okay, thank you for that, Emmanuel. I would like to bring in Shane, because Shane has a lots of experience, vast experience, with his interventions when it comes to mental health support for people, particularly in a lot of cases men. So Shane, when we talk about gender-based violence in the broad sense, and then we could, of course, break it down with school-based violence. Why do you seem to think, based on your professional experience, why do you think men are more likely to be perpetrators of violence? Is it that we're missing something in our culture? Is it that we're not training them up in the way that they should go? When they're old, they will not depart from it. What exactly is it?
I don't think it's uniquely specified. Just a quick broad overview of why this is happening now. In the throes of a pandemic, and we were asked to stay home, lock down, separate, and we were not connecting and getting together. And then all of a sudden, school is reopened, everyone is back out at work. But what we did not do, we didn't prepare everyone for the reintegration post-COVID. So if you think of, we were locked away for 2 years, and now we're back. And it's not only in Guyana, this has been an uptick in violence through the whole Caribbean and other parts of the world. As part of my research, these are the things that we are seeing, that now that everyone is back out, there's this heightened anxiety in terms of how do we relate to each other. And when we're not given the proper tools to relate to each other, violence becomes the key way of relating. Like the student was talking about, they think that maybe young males are bored because, they're back out to school. They're probably not that interested in learning because they've been home for 2 years. There was no proper public social protocol of reinventing how do we go back out to school. I did a show on the Jamaican national TV, and we were talking about that. Maybe what the government should have done was reintroduce opening of schools and other public places in a very manageable amount, instead of having all the kids back at one time. You just gradually reintegrate. And really, when they get back into school, how do we talk to them about reintegration and that anxiety of coming back to school? Because you come back to school, it's a whole new ball game. The kids, you probably don't know them anymore. They're bigger, they're more exposed because they've been home for 2 years looking at internet. Getting involved in probably things they should not get involved in. So I think from a public health policy, and I think maybe the teacher can attest to this, prior to COVID, we had better control over students. Post-COVID, we opened back these floodgates, and we had no way of supporting these students, and supporting teachers as these students comes back. And teachers are the frontline heroes. And so we throw all these kids in them, and we provided them no support. So that's just an overview. I want us to think of, not in terms of blaming these kids as they are, they're young, they're bad, they don't have behavior, but really think of what were some of the institutional and national structural things that maybe we could have done and explore in supporting these young people as they return.
Thank you for sharing that, Shane. I want to bring in Defta again to ask if it's really if the case is that we we had this issue before COVID because children were choosing violence against each other since before COVID. So is it possible that when we have the onset of COVID now and the persons are now
was exacerbated by the pandemic. It didn't exactly as a result of we had underlying issues before. And I think that one of the major things, and I'm just gonna, because I was thinking as Mr. Toll was speaking, that we don't have enough male teachers and figures in the system. And the males that are there, they're, I don't want to say generalize or anything, but most of them, they're soft because we all, when you love children and you're in the profession of teaching, you don't want to be too harsh with children because we're trying to, understand them and support them and these types of things. So that's one thing that we're lacking a lot of male presence in schools. And so as which I went back to telling you that there are lots of things that we learn younger that cause us to not as boys respect the female teachers. We're not afraid of them. And so, okay, I do something bad, what is Miss going to do? That kind of mentality. And then they have these boys tend to have a more egotistic approach in school where if they're peer pressure, they have to prove that they're macho and they have to prove that they're the man and that nobody can threaten or make them feel less and these types of things. And so before the pandemic, now that there were 2 years at home, it also exposed the fact that parents, a lot of the time, we're young, we have children, we don't know, everything. There's no parenting 101 to say how to bring up these children. And a lot of the parents, they're immature. They also don't, how do I say it? Teachers support parents in raising their children. And so when the parents are left alone and they have so many responsibilities, they have to be at work, they have to be doing house chores and all these things, they can't exactly alone. They were left alone in the task of bringing up their children. And so coming back into the school, it's now we as teachers, we are grappling with getting back those
that Defta. If we can bring back Shane into the fold, the conversation about parents or this kind of relationship, I would want to go so far as saying a partnership between parents and teachers in how children or how students are able to perform. And it's not just about academic performance, it is also about socialization, as Defta would have talked about. Shane, based on your professional experience, what exactly, based on your experience, do you think needs to be the foundation that would really build a cohesive or a better relationships and parents to ensure that those kinds of issues are dealt with, where parents share information with teachers, teachers share information with parents, and it doesn't get into this kind of, a conflict or some kind of controversy? How exactly?
I believe that, yes, I do agree that they need to be a partnership, but also I think that more males need to be present and need to have an active presence in the school. Most times when a parent comes to school, the mother comes. When there's parent-teachers meeting, the mothers come. And the fathers are not a part of that upbringing. So I really think maybe what we need to do is really start encouraging dads to come to school and really have conversations about what are our responsibilities, but also look at it from an intergenerational perspective as well as a cultural perspective. In Guyana, think of a 5-year-old boy running around, fall down, bruise his knees, get up, start crying. What are some of the messages he gets immediately? You have to put on your mic.
We hear gets up, brush it off, don't cry, things like that.
Boys
There's a
don't cry.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
I agree.
So at that age, when we're telling young boys that their emotions are not valid, so very early, young men get this message that I can't cry, I can't express my emotions. The only way I can communicate is through dominance. So if we're able to introduce younger men and have pretty good role models and conversations about validating their feelings, like I'm sure the young man that we have on right now, I mean, the first time some girl broke his heart, I'm sure he did not run home and cry to his mom. Now, the young lady, if some young man breaks her heart, that's what she would do, and she'll have her sisters and her girlfriends and her cousins, and they have that camaraderie and that support. Young men don't have that. So I really think it starts. I happen to be in Guyana right now, and for the 2 weeks I've been here, when I drive by, especially high schools, the language that young men are using towards young women, it is obscene, it is disrespectful, and I think we give young people a raw deal. Oh, these young people have no behavior, they're rude. Where did they get that from? They get that from us, because we didn't teach them what it's like to be a gentleman and how to relate to women and how to have a sense of self-respect. And I see this is very paramount when we talk about toxic masculinity. It happens because we perpetuate it over and over. So we need to get more men in the school system and just get more fathers to come to school. I think at Duke Bishop's High School, this would be a great initiative. Like, you have a Father's Day where students bring their dads to school. And it really would give us an opportunity to see how they relate to their children. And I mean, both male and female students bringing their dads to school. And so, because what we don't do, we partnership with moms on how to raise children. We do not partnership with dads how to raise children. So this is just a new intervention and a new paradigm of thinking of how we get young men. So how do we support them? Because I don't think they have a lot of support as well.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Shane. I actually want to bring in the students back in the center. We had a conversation briefly about influences. We talked about social media, we talked about the internet, but we didn't quite touch on music. So I want to ask Oluchi first and then Emmanuel. What are your thoughts on what would influence students to choose violence? Is it that people just decide to wake up and choose violence because maybe they're depressed or they're being bullied? Or is it that it's what they see, maybe on social media, video games, music, whatever kind of music? And I don't want to discriminate on music, because any kind of music, based on the words, you could perhaps demonstrate that. But what exactly are your thoughts? Do you see children or students really acting out based on whether it's music, social media, the internet? What exactly?
What I believe, in a quiet corner, but due to provocation by other students, taunting, bullying, and completely just teasing this child over and over again, the child can act out in violence. Because while the child may be complaining about it, it's not being handled, nothing is being done about the situation. So that can lead as a result. I don't know, but the perpetrators, I would think, is what they see. That's what they grew up knowing, and probably the music influences too. But mostly for me, it's provocation.
Okay.
No one just
All right.
wakes up and say, I want to be violent.
Something would motivate them or influence them to do that. All right. Emmanuel? You have to unmute Emmanuel.
I would
Yeah.
agree, yes. Yeah. I would agree that indeed music does motivate you to do the things that it say. But first, there's a primary problem that goes on, like you're being bullied or your parents ain't giving you enough love. That automatically makes you sad inside. And with the build up of the music, some people use music to cope with things, and some people use music to make themselves better. Like if you're working out, you listen to motivational music to make yourself feel better. So yeah, sometimes there's music that makes you do very, very violent things, but you'd also have to be mentally messed up to actually listen to it and then take it into action. That's why there's so much shootings in places like America. It's like mentally ill people that already this music telling me then this is totally agree with Mr. Sim.
For so, uh, comment we our answer. The other part of the conversation I want to call religion in schools. And when the uptick of violence started, there was a conversation. Some persons wrote to the editor in terms of letters to the editor. Some people wrote on Facebook saying it's because prayers came out of school. We need to partner more with faith-based organizations to ensure that pastors and other faith leaders come in and really have some kind of partnership with school. How exactly would you respond to that? I'll ask each panelist to respond, but of course I'll take Depth to first, and then we'll take Shane, and we'll take the students.
All right, Kobe. With me and the religion thing, it's kind of touchy because religion is like something that we would have hoped to help curb certain behaviors and teach morality in these types of things. But for me also, well, the point that religion has lost its presence in school, we also recently have not seen many active Hindu societies, the Bible Club and the Islamic Society and these types of things. We don't have them very active right now in the schools. And that's on the part that it's actually helping to curb this behavior. But on the other end, for me, and I will say this because I have to say it at some point in this discussion, that religion is one of the things as well that teach boys that they can do female certain things and get away with it. So it's so deep rooted in their behavior. When we understand what the reasons are that they are doing this to the females, is that they want to control and dominate, and that behavior is being taught by religion. So it's a twofold thing for me when it comes to religion and school.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, Defta. Shane?
Yeah, I have to think about that because I think that religion is a very personal choice, and I don't know if it necessarily has to be private. People continue to go to their places of worship and get the support they need, I think it would make the school experience better. But I do want to go back to what the two young people were talking about. And I really think young people are the experts on young people. And their underlying message is really about not having enough support, where they were very clear that maybe my parents didn't love me enough. I don't have enough support at school, or I'm by myself, I'm being bullied, and there's no support there. I think that we have this very broad concept of bullying and stop bullying, but I really don't think we have addressed it in a way that is individualized. And I think we really need to just say, okay, bullying is bad and stop doing it. But we need to become stewards of compassion, that if you see someone being bullied, step in, step up, support that person. Don't join the nonsense. And primarily, the young people are the ones that would have to do it. But we also need to give them some tools and how we can support them as they do that. Instead of being confrontational, maybe we can use some mediation skills or teach them some mediating skills of how they can mediate a potential conflict.
Thank you for sharing that, Shane. Emmanuel, any thoughts on that?
I think that if more religions like Christianity, like more Bible clubs be added in schools, I think less violence would occur. Less things that involve violence would occur, because most religions promote peace, like Christianity, or like just Christianity. And some people may misinterpret the scriptures, putting words and not getting the right information from the Bible or from any other religion. And that may cause violence. So, that's my take.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Emmanuel. Oluchi, any thoughts on that?
While religion in schools might be a good idea, I think everyone forgets that religion is a broad aspect, and as schools are filled with a lot of children, every child has a different religion. So it matters if the school and the children can come together and respect each other's religion enough to have different Bible clubs and Quran readings and everything in the school to have that. Because while bullying might be dealing with what somebody said, it can also be around religion. Somebody can bully somebody else because of their religion. So if they can come together and respect each other's religion, then religion in school would not be a good idea. It might just lead to more conflict.
Okay. Because people or persons in schools are different, and people will come with different experiences and different understandings of religion. So that's your take. Okay, Oluchi. I want to come to Shane. So Shane, so you would have published a book in 2021, and you've actually been on a tour in terms of promoting this book and really trying to center what you call the mental health pandemic, which is really a pandemic within the larger pandemic. Really, concise or really gives concise information, tools for persons to respond to the situation of a mental health crisis. How exactly, or what really led you to write the book? And how do you think the book can be used by the education system, by parents, by students, by teachers to identify mental health issues, but also to respond? So tell us what led you to write it, what's your motivation, and two, how you see the book really helping this broader issue of responding to violence.
Well, what led me to writing the book was I was in New York City when the pandemic started, and I saw how the whole city shut down, and then incrementally how the world shut down. And even my private practice, I had to shut down and go back to my house and start working from there. But what I also noticed was this uptick in anxiety among everyone, because within a day or two, we were told to lock lock down, stay inside, separate, wash your hands, and the hysteria of the pandemic was so unknown that there were all this stuff going around and all these myths, and it really, I mean, what we noticed was this uptick in not just anxiety but abuse of drugs, suicide, depression, and these were things that we were dealing with that were on the line. I think the pandemic really exacerbated, and mental health became the pandemic within the pandemic. And so I wanted to offer a body of work where anyone from fourth grade up could pick up this book. It's about 40 pages and read it and get a very good sense of what mental health looks like, not only in our personal lives, but in the lives of the people that we care about. And it's really something you can attach to your toolkit where anyone can pick this book up and read it and have a good understanding of what mental health looks like, what self-care looks like. There's a chapter in the book talk about men and mental health, and which I think is very important, especially what's going on now with gender-based violence and the environment that we're in, especially in Guyana. And one of the other goals was to demystify the myth about mental health, especially among young people. I've been coming to Guyana for the last 5 years, talking about mental health, trying to get young people involved in understanding what mental health looks like. And really, I'm sure the younger people know by now that Guyana has a very high incident rates of suicide. So I really want to offer them what are some of the skills, or how can we support them, and how can we create safe spaces where they can go and talk about mental health and talk about their feelings and their aspirations and their fears, especially young men. Because even though there may be a higher attempt of suicide by young women, for young men, when they do commit suicide, when they do decide to die by suicide, it is more profound and pronounced. So the book is here. I'd be more than willing to come to a school and talk about what mental health looks like among young people, and what are some of the things we can do to support teachers as well.
Okay. Shane, for persons who are listening, parents, teachers, students, persons from NGOs, persons from the government, Ministry of Education, how can they get access to this book? Where can they buy it from? Where can they go and get a copy or copies from?
The book is on Amazon, and I actually do have a few copies with me. I'll be in Guyana for the next 3 weeks, so you can share my information in the chat, and people can feel free to reach out to me. I'm definitely open to collaborating with ministries, especially the Ministry of Education. Tomorrow at 2:00, I was invited by the headmisters and teachers at Queensland Community High School, where I went to many moons ago, to do a presentation on mental health. So okay. I'm always honored to do those kind of things. And Kobe, you know how to get me.
Great. So you said it's available on Amazon.com. It's called The Mental Health Pandemic by Shane Tull.
Correct.
And I know we're going to paste your information in the chat, but Shane, what would be your contact information that you would want persons to contact you if they would like to have copies or to engage with you on getting copies?
I can be reached at 697-5528. That's my local number in Guyana, and I'm also on WhatsApp. So the best way to reach me is via WhatsApp. Just send me a message, and I will definitely respond. Okay?
Okay. Thank you so much. At this point, we have a couple of questions and comments coming from social media. And the first one says, what safeguarding policies or mechanisms are lacking and need to be in place to pick up on the first signs of unwanted behaviors? What safeguarding policies and mechanisms are lacking and need to be in place to pick up on the first signs of unwanted behavior? Perhaps I can take the teacher, and then, of course, Shane, since you would engage in counseling, I would ask you as well to respond to that one. So, Def, do you have any thoughts on that?
Right, I'm just gonna go in and say that teachers are not trained, or they don't know exactly how to deal with, how to first identify when students are crying for help. And
Mhm.
even when we do recognize, how to deal with it and how to treat them after that. We're really lacking that major step in helping teachers or equipping them to deal with these types of issues that are showing up in schools. And so we really need, I don't know if we want to incorporate it into CPC or have this mass training of teachers on how to identify and how to deal with students that are showing signs of, being neglected or whatever that makes them want to choose violence.
Okay.
To add to that,
Shane, yeah. Mhm.
I think teachers are these unsung heroes that we drop our kids off in the morning and expect them to be teachers to take care of them until we pick them back up, and they should be perfect because they should not come home and give us problems. Completely unrealistic. But to the teacher, I would like to offer that I'll be more than willing while I'm here to come in and have a conversation with your teachers about what are some of the signs to look for. Suspect a student may be in distress. Okay, I do think if we can equip teachers with the skill set, they will be more active and they'll be more equipped to work in partnership with the parents. But I really believe when teachers send for parents, we are very clear that we need to see both parents, not just the mom. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Shane and Defter. For the students, Emmanuel and Oluchi, do you know of, maybe you have peers, colleagues, schoolmates who would have had certain kinds of behaviors, certain ways that they behave that would have been like a red flag? Do you know what some of those behaviors are based on your experience in schools? Maybe somebody lashed out. What exactly would be some of those behaviors if you would have seen anything in school?
I'd say they'd be, quiet in a corner, probably not really social or
Mhm.
in their corner, but they might have like some issues. They might just want to be left alone, not social, and then when provoked, they'll lash out. They would be quiet.
Mhm.
Some might not, they're not extroverted, they're introverted, and they're like peace and the quiet, but if provoked, they'll lash out.
Okay.
Some might be
All right.
passive instead of aggressive. So
Hmm. Thank you, Oluchi, for that. Emmanuel, any thoughts?
First thing that I would like to address is that I've observed that most schools don't have councils or councils. My school has a council, and most schools don't have social workers. And I personally think that every school needs a social worker because there might be one child that's all right, but the many children have social problems or some problem going on in the home that's affecting them from getting what they need to do in school finish. Certain behaviors, I think that the child may seem more burnt out than usual, or the child may seem depressed. Like most of the time, the child would be happy or well dressed and well prepared and so on. Well, some cases the child may seem sad and lack of energy, just a droopy look. But I highly advise councils in schools because if the child starts to act up, the teacher can carry the child to the council. So the council could figure out whether was the problem. Why are you being like this, and could possibly fix the problem.
So, Emmanuel, I want to ask this question. We are, you guys are the experts on your lives. I do believe that. What do you think are some of the things that we can do, or some of the services that we can offer you in terms of how you not only navigate your own space, but how you navigate your friendships and your relationship with your peers at school in a healthy manner?
Can you please repeat, sir?
I'm sorry? Hello?
He's asking you to repeat. Yeah. Yeah, Shane.
What are how do you think we can support young people?
I think you should set up council resolution skills. Like teachers should teach children about counseling resolution skills. So maybe one day the child may want to do counseling, so that that same school, this should be the student that you taught could probably help that same child that is having problems at home.
Okay.
Very good. I think conflict resolution is probably the core of how we mitigate a lot of the conflicts and the bullying and this and also we also have to think about cyberbullying as well, where as teachers and administrators of school, we don't have any control over that. But these are the conversations that we could have with students, and how to navigate that and how not to perpetuate it. If you see something negative, post on social media by one person, instead of sharing that post, you kind of want to have a conversation with the person that put the post up in terms of how do we manage that in terms of taking it down and not repeating that behavior. Because believe me, you young people will be the generation that's going to change the world. So we just want to know what tools and how we can support you so you can make that change in ways that we can empower you.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Shane. We have a couple of other comments from Facebook, and there's one from Kebron Singh, and it says, there must be a safeguarding team. Kebron is saying there must be a safeguarding team at each school, and that team should be able to identify when these matters arise to really help these particular students. We have a question from Justin Field, actually a friend of mine. And Justin is asking us to restate the name of the book again, Shane. What is the name of the book again, Shane, and where can people get it?
The Mental Health Pandemic, and it's on Amazon. And I'm in Guyana. I also have a few copies. I can be reached at 697-5528.
Great. Defta, I'm seeing that you want to make an intervention. Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to continue on our build on how we can help the students, help them answer that question. We, as I mentioned, we definitely need courses for teachers on how to handle these types of situations, how to identify and how to help those students. Counselors, as Mr. Hamer mentioned, and even if you have counselors, ensure that these counselors are, they can help, because Bishop's got its history and counselors and whatever has been shared in the media. So I'll be careful with what I see, but ensure that the counselor is actually approachable, accessible, and placed in a way that in the school where if this student might be seeking counseling, that they can do so discreetly, because of course there is stigma against students who seek that type of help. Also, we need to have sex education and family planning discussions in schools, because too much girls are going through all of this. They're being slut shamed. I hate that response to these young ladies. They're crying out for help. And we need not to slut shame them. If that's what we're doing as teachers, we need to just stop it. We also need to, I really, really want in the future, if he can in his priorities can actually prepare something like a one-on-one on how to actually navigate relationships and conflict resolution, and how even for parents who don't know to identify these things in their own children, and how their behavior and their situation is contributing to all of this to the children. And going back to the point of having clubs in school, and besides the religious groups, maybe gender empowerment groups, not just female empowerment, which is what we've been harping on a lot lately, but also male empowerment. And how to deal with our emotions. We can teach in those clubs how to deal with emotions, and not just leave everything for the teachers, but the students can sort some of the things out for themselves as well. And we also need to work on stamping down on access to drugs in schools. It is too easily accessible right now. I don't know where these children are getting drugs from, but it is just exacerbating their behavior and responses to violence and whatever internal issues they're struggling with. And even are scared. We also are worried about what these children have in their bags. So when they come, why not have the security? I'm fortunate. I'm one of the fortunate teachers to be at a school like Bishop's where violence is not so high, but teachers have to deal with that. High ranking on that list of schools, and these types of things, it is say, okay, I want to kill myself, or I'm depressed. Badges of honor that these children are wearing these days. And so we need to work on fixing those things, and maybe then we can help them a little bit more effectively.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Shane, you have an intervention? Sure.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I do think that there are some things that I can do. I think everyone, I think we put a lot of emphasis on, oh, well, the teachers need to do this, or the ministry need to do this, or government need to do this. Everyone need to see that young people are our number one resource and our priority. And if we focus the positive energies on that, I think we'll get good results. I really want us to move away from pathologizing youth and young people, and move to a place where we are empowering them. Even, I think, if you think of what young people goes through, the act of showing up at school every day is a revolutionary act. Think about that. The amount of things that they go through, and they still show up at school and try to learn. So I really want us to humanize them and to recognize that they're young, their brains are developing, they're growing, they don't have all the answers, we don't have all the answers, but what are some of the things we can do to support them as they try to navigate their way through adulthood?
Thank you for sharing that, Shane. We have a comment. We just have a couple of minutes remaining, and I just want for us to clarify this question. We have a question from Gojo Satoru, and he's saying, and that person is saying, some children would be scared to attend or to support any kind of religious activities in schools in fear of what their peers might say. And the person is asking, how could that person deal with that? Does anybody have any kind of thoughts on how that person could handle dealing with religious activities in school, even though they may be stigmatized? Is somebody speaking? After you speaking? Yeah,
Maybe,
great.
maybe we can first start to help students understand that you have a right to believe in what you wish to believe in, as well as teaching other students that we need to respect, just as Miss Semple said. We have to respect each other's opinions and choices and whatever we choose to believe in. And so, I really hope that it's not a case like that where you're actually being bullied for, attending religious activities in school. If that's the case, that is so, so sad. But we really do need to teach respect for each other's choices and opinions and get a handle on that.
Thank you, Defta. We have an intervention from Oluchi. Go ahead.
I think as a person that love your religion and you believe in it, even though they might stigmatize you, you should go and do that religious activity. And everyone knows that might help you or give you some encouragement or motivation. So as a person that believes religion can be helpful in certain cases, you should not listen to what they have to say about your religion. You should go and do your religious activity because as it is your religion, not theirs.
Thank you, Oluchi. On the point that Defta raised on sex education, there is the health and family life education program with certain components, well, not comprehensively as advocates would want it to be, but with certain components of sex ed, but there isn't like a standard comprehensive sexuality education program in Guyana. There's the HFLE program that has contents of sex ed within it, but is not, advocates don't feel it is where it's supposed to be. And so the conversation has to be, how do we advocate or continue to advocate for a more broad-based, comprehensive sexuality education in school that focuses on for family planning, sexual and reproductive health and rights, that talks about how we address gender-based violence, that talks about healthy relationships, intimate partner relationships, because the understanding is that we have young people who are having relationships. The idea is that young people they're also having sex. Exactly. And so the conversation has to be, how do we give young people the information to help them to make informed decisions about their sexuality? And we're not at that place that we're supposed to be in this country, but we need to be there. But we also need young people, students like Oluchi and Emmanuel, but also teachers like Dr. and advocates like Shane, to continue to openly and publicly call for these particular interventions, because the reality is that this matter is really about life and death. People die because of lack of access to information, and so it means that we have to do something about it. I know that we have 3 minutes to go, so Defta, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to give me final thoughts.
I just quickly wanted to say that the very things that we're trying to shelter them by not giving a full blast sex ed thing in school, we're trying to shelter them. They already know. Trust me, they know.
Yeah.
So no use trying to shelter them. Just teach them the right way and how to properly do things. And I think my 30 seconds over.
Great. Emmanuel, 30 seconds, and then I'm going to take Oluchi and then Shane, and I'm going to wrap up in 30 seconds as well. Quickly.
I think that you highly educate them with the process of birth control. Like what Miss said, some people know, but they just don't care. They still do it. But that shouldn't stop you from teaching it, because some people do lack the knowledge and just do because they lack the information. So I think they should teach the process of birth control a lot more.
Great. Oluchi, your couple of seconds start now.
I believe that they should do a full sex ed course because it is needed in schools. They have a lot of teenage pregnancy and so situations going on. So it should be done fully to like its
Okay,
full extent.
great. And Shane, last but not least, 30 seconds.
I would like to congratulate the two young people for being here and really schooling us about their experience. And I think it gives us a lot to think about. And whatever intervention we're going to come up with, there must be an intricate part of it. So we will probably be calling on them again to as we continue these conversations. And thank you for inviting a man of a certain age to be part of your panel. I really appreciate it. And good luck to all.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Emmanuel, Oluchi, and Shane for participating in the first episode of Let's Talk GBV, Let's Talk Gender-Based Violence. This will continue to be conversations that Marundai will host. The next conversation we have will be on July 3rd, and we will be talking about access to justice, where we will highlight the remedies available to support and protect gender-based violence survivors, and hosting support community. Pleasure. Follow our social media. That's Marundai on Facebook, YouTube, and on the other social media platforms. Keep informed, stay engaged, and look out for us for our next episode on, of course, July 3rd. Goodbye and stay safe.
Goodbye.